In this recording, I will provide an introduction to the concept of a cost breakdown structure, or CBS, as it relates to project management. The CBS is the financial counterpart to the operational structure, the WBS, or work breakdown structure. The CBS is a multi-level hierarchy. And the importance of that is that you can use the CBS to analyze your project financially at any aggregation level. So right now we're looking at the project total, which is my top line, but I can break that down into my level 2, my level 3, and my level 4 components, or however deep I would have defined my cost breakdown structure. So it really is a very flexible reporting tool, just like the WBS is for your operational controls. Now, for many companies where CBS capabilities are not available in the project accounting or project management solution, it means that the CBS-related workloads and controls are sometimes managed against the WBS. So essentially, you are using the WBS, which is an operational entity, for financial control because you don't have a dedicated CBS. I think more often what we see is that these workloads and controls are moved into disconnected third-party applications, predominantly Microsoft Excel. With CBS capabilities built right into the financial project management solution, Adeaca PPA is fundamentally different. What we're looking at here is the CBS in Adeaca PPA. So this is the hierarchy that we use to manage financial metrics against our projects. This would include budgets and contract values and forecasts, actuals, variances, and progress indicators, but also a lot of additional financial KPIs. Importantly, this is a separate structure from the WBS. So let's try to close down the CBS here and navigate to the work breakdown structure of this very same project. So this is the WBS. They are similar in some ways because they are both multi-level hierarchies. So just like on the CBS side, I can expand and collapse elements of my WBS. This is very clearly an operational structure. We can see that by the fact that it has a Gantt chart, which is depicting our timeline. And it is an important element of the operational controls of the project. You can also see that it actually links back into the CBS. So this task here, which is my risk management planning, is linked into an element, an account in my CBS as well. So even though they're separate, they are still connected and they're still linked. But the important thing is that the way I construct my WBS needs to be with the operational controls in mind. And these are not necessarily the same requirements that I would have on the CBS side. So typically, we see the WBS having a lot of additional granularity compared to the CBS. So as a very simple example, your WBS may have 500 tasks and your CBS only 50 accounts, because that is what makes sense from a financial control perspective. A CBS can be anything from a few accounts in a flat structure to thousands of accounts in a deep and complex hierarchy. I have created a couple of examples of that. Let's first try to review a very simple CBS. Here you can see a cost breakdown structure with just 7 accounts. I have a summary for labor, which I can then break down into 3 additional components, and then 1 account for materials and 1 for expense. So a very simple CBS, presumably to manage a fairly simple project. If I move on to my next example, we have here a CBS with 6 levels. This is my level 6. So obviously a lot more sophistication built in. I have many more summary levels. I'm able to slice and dice my project financial data in many additional ways, simply given the way that I've constructed the CBS. Now, the important thing is that it is one thing to define a very sophisticated CBS, but you must also be able to work with it subsequently. So for instance, I have to be able to record costs and actuals and do my reforecasting at the lowest level that I have defined in my CBS. If I'm not able to do that, I need to simplify my CBS so that it better matches the way that I'm actually going to execute the project. Outside of the raw financial metrics like your cost budget and your revenue budget, the CBS is used for a whole range of additional financial control functions and for reporting purposes. Now, to that end, there's a lot of additional information that we need to track against the CBS and a lot of information that we need to use to classify individual accounts within the CBS to determine how they are treated financially. So there's a few of those that I wish to highlight at this stage. First of all, we have the cost code, which is a grouping of accounts that we use for aggregated reporting. Secondly, the EVA principle determines how earned value is computed for individual accounts within the CBS. This might be the same for the entire structure, but as you can see here, I can apply different earning principles to different accounts in the CBS if that is what I need to do. Leading into EVA, but also cash flow, is time phasing, which is an important element as well. So in many cases, it is not enough to know what my budget is. I also need to know the cadence by which I expect to consume that budget. And by extension, the cadence at which I expect to progress on the project. This is certainly a central element when it comes to EVA. The final component I want to highlight here is the deliverable budget or the quantity budget. So this is an option to apply an additional progress indicator outside of simply how much of your budget you have consumed. Of course, we have the completed work indicator from the WBS, but this is a pure financial indicator, the quantity budget. So a quantity budget can really represent anything, a percentage of completion, a number of units that you have completed up until a certain point, or even square meters, miles, or cubic meters, any kind of quantity that you can measure against the project, and we can subsequently hold up against your budget consumption to do productivity calculations. The CBS is initially used as a planning structure, but once we move into execution, it becomes a control structure as well. What you're looking at here is the cost breakdown structure within the costing sheet, which is where we do our month-end reforecasting, but also our day-to-day follow-up on everything financial related to our project. The fact that we're using the CBS for this, once again, means that I can use the levels of my CBS to aggregate my numbers, to look at summary levels, and to drill down into a more detailed view of the project. So some of the important controls here certainly include our EACs, which is part of the reforecasting process. By extension, the variance, are we over and under budget, and our completion degree, how much of our estimate have we consumed until a certain point in time. Other views would include burn rate and earned value, for instance. So these are my EVA metrics for the project. Now, once again, all the EVA components are calculated for the project total, but I can view that as well at any level that I've defined in my CBS. And then finally, we have the visual page, which is showing me my trending information, also EVA components like the S-curve, cost and schedule performance indexes, variances, margins, and how they're developing over time. So these are all components where the CBS certainly plays a central role, and they are topics that we will dive deeper into in future recordings.